My name is Iris C. Taylor. I'm 31 years old. I'm a commercial insurance broker in Chicago. Nothing glamorous. I spend my days explaining liability clauses to people who would rather be doing almost anything else, negotiating policy terms for mid-sized businesses, and occasionally closing deals big enough to make the job feel less like structured anxiety and more like a career. I drive a reliable Honda Civic, keep my closet embarrassingly organized, and until 3 weeks ago, I genuinely believed I had my future mapped out in a way that felt calm and ordinary and good. Not perfect, just real. His name was Paige Sullivan. Yes, Paige, a man with a soft voice, expensive haircuts, and the kind of polished downtown charisma people confuse with depth all the time. We had been together for 4 years, engaged for 8 months. He worked in digital marketing for one of those startups downtown that always seemed to have exposed brick walls, kombucha on tap, beanbag chairs in a collaboration zone, and absolutely no adults in charge. He made decent money, maybe a little less than I did, but we had always kept our finances mostly separate. We split rent evenly on our 2-bedroom in Lincoln Park, alternated grocery runs, and handled restaurants however felt fair in the moment. It was not romantic in a movie way, but it felt balanced, functional, mature. At least I thought it did. Looking back now, I can see the cracks started long before I was willing to name them. Mid-November was when they became impossible to miss. November 18th, a Tuesday. I remember because I had just closed a painfully tedious contract renewal with a manufacturing client, and I came home in a better mood than usual. It was around 6:30, cold outside, dark already, the kind of Chicago evening that makes your shoulders tighten before you even get out of the car. Paige was on the couch, scrolling through his phone with that blank expression people wear when their eyes are moving, but nothing is really landing. "Hey," I said, dropping my bag by the door, thinking we could grab dinner at that Thai place you like. My treat. Commission came through. He didn't even look up at first. Can't. Meeting some friends for drinks later. There was something off in the way he said it. Too casual. Too trimmed down. "Oh," I said. "Which friends?" "Just people from work. You wouldn't know them." That should have been my first real warning sign. Paige used to tell me everything. Which coworker was incompetent. What his boss said in a meeting that made everyone pretend not to cringe. Which campaign had gone sideways. Office gossip. Petty frustrations, random details that did not matter, except that sharing them is part of intimacy. Suddenly, his work life had become vague, blurred out, like I was no longer allowed inside that part of him. "Want me to come?" I asked. "No," he said too quickly, then softer. "It's just a work thing. You'd be bored." I let it go, went into the kitchen, made myself a sandwich. 40 minutes later, he came out of the bedroom in a black shirt I had never seen before, dark coat, the expensive one, hair done more carefully than usual. He smelled sharper, too, like cologne layered over anticipation. "You look nice," I said. He smiled without warmth. "Thanks, don't wait up." He got home at 1:15 in the morning. I know because I was still awake, lying in bed in the dark, trying very hard not to become the kind of woman who listens for the sound of keys in the lock and starts building stories before the door even opens. When he came in, he smelled like cigarettes and expensive perfume. Not mine, not his, not anything that belonged in our apartment. I asked if he had fun. He just said yeah and went straight to shower. That happened 3 more times that week. By the end of November, our conversations had shrunk into logistics. "Can you grab milk? I'll be late. The water bill is due." We had not had sex in 6 weeks. We had not really talked, not in any way that felt alive, in even longer. I kept telling myself work was heavy, the holidays were making everything strange. Startup culture was chaotic. Men withdraw when they're stressed. You can build 1,000 excuses for someone when you still love the person you think they are. December 10th was when everything stopped being abstract. One of my clients postponed a late meeting, so I got home around 4 in the afternoon and decided, stupidly and sweetly, to surprise Paige with dinner. Maybe we could reset, sit down together, eat something warm, remember why we got engaged in the first place. His laptop was open on the dining table. He had clearly left in a hurry, half-full coffee mug beside it, charger plugged in, no phone attached. I was not trying to snoop. That part matters to me even now. I walked past it on my way to the kitchen, and the screen lit up from sleep mode. Facebook Messenger. A conversation open at the top with someone named Ava. The preview message visible on the screen said, "Last night was incredible. When can I see you again?" My whole body went still. There is a kind of shock that feels loud, and then there is the kind that makes the room go silent around you. This was the second kind. I sat down very slowly. I knew I should walk away. I knew that whatever came after clicking would divide my life into before and after. I clicked anyway. The messages went back months. July, before we had even set our wedding date. At first it was flirtation, suggestive jokes, then sexual messages, explicit photos, hotel plans, dinner reservations, restaurants I recognized because I had suggested them for anniversaries and Paige said they were too expensive. Ava was not the only one either. She was just the main one. There were 3 other women in different stages of rotation, none as intense, but all intimate enough to destroy any last room for denial. My fiancé was not just cheating on me. He was managing an entire side life. I sat there for nearly 2 hours reading everything. Sometimes my vision blurred, and I had to stop because I could not tell if I was about to cry, throw up, or break something. I did none of those. Instead, I started screenshotting everything. Methodical, quiet, clinical, sent it all to myself, backed it up twice. The more I read, the more something inside me shut down in a way I still do not fully know how to explain. Not because I did not care, because I cared so much that feeling all of it at once would have crushed me. When Paige came home around 6:30, I was still sitting at the table. The laptop was closed by then. I had composed my face enough not to look like a woman whose entire future had just been set on fire in the middle of her own dining room. He came in, dropped his bag, and said, "Hey, why are you home so early?" "Meeting got canceled," I said. He nodded, disappeared into the bedroom to change, and I heard him humming. Humming. That was the detail that stayed with me. Not the messages, not the hotels, not the photos I will never fully scrub out of my brain. It was the sound of him moving around our apartment, humming to himself, comfortable and untouched, and completely unaware that I now knew exactly who he had been for months. I should have confronted him that night. Maybe a stronger woman would have. Instead, I said nothing, because I was not angry yet. I was numb, and numb, I would soon learn, can be far more dangerous than rage. I didn't confront him that night. Maybe part of me wanted to. Maybe some smaller, more dramatic version of me wanted to slam the laptop shut in Paige's face, throw screenshots across the table, and force him to watch his own lies spill out under the kitchen light. But I wasn't there yet. Anger is sharp. What I felt was heavier than that. It was numbness, the kind that makes you move carefully, because if you feel too much too soon, you might not survive it with your dignity intact. So from December 11th through the 15th, I acted normal. I went to work, I answered emails, I came home at the usual time, I asked if he wanted takeout, I nodded when he said he'd be late. I made the kind of small talk people make when they still live inside the shell of a relationship that has already died, but hasn't been buried yet. Paige had no idea I knew. That part still amazes me. Every time he said he was meeting friends or staying late or had one more thing to wrap up downtown, he said it to a woman who had already read hotel confirmations, explicit messages, restaurant reservations, and enough lies to map his entire side life. And still, he hummed while changing shirts. Still, he kissed my cheek sometimes on the way out, like habit was enough to cover rot. I called my friend Kevin, who works in real estate law, and told him I needed facts, not comfort. We were both on the apartment lease, co-signers, which meant I couldn't just throw him out and call it justice. Kevin laid out the options cleanly. One of us could buy the other out, or we could both walk and deal with the early termination penalty. I called the landlord that same afternoon, told him I'd be moving out, told him I'd cover my half through the end of January if Paige wanted to stay, or we could negotiate an early exit if he wanted to break the lease too. The landlord sounded almost bored by it, which weirdly comforted me. Apparently, heartbreak is not rare enough to surprise property managers. Then I called my parents in Minneapolis. My mother cried the minute she understood. My father, being my father, asked if I was sure, asked whether I was reacting too quickly, asked if maybe there was more to the story. I sent him one screenshot, just one. He never asked another question after that. By December 16th, I had started packing. Not obvious things. Nothing that would trigger suspicion in a man too busy managing multiple affairs to notice his own apartment thinning out around him. Personal documents, family photos, my grandfather's watch, the jewelry box from my dresser, the good whiskey a client gave me last spring. Little things first, things that mattered. I loaded them into my Civic over 3 separate trips, parking 2 blocks away so he wouldn't notice the trunk filling up one quiet layer at a time. I found a furnished studio in Wicker Park available immediately. Small, Expensive for what it was, barely charming. I signed the lease anyway on December 18th. I didn't care if the walls were dull and the windows looked out at a brick wall. It was not supposed to be forever. It was supposed to be mine. And the whole time, Paige suspected nothing. That was the most humiliating part, maybe. Not just that he had betrayed me, but that he had underestimated me so completely while doing it. He thought I was still standing in the dark, waiting to be told who he was. He thought I was still the woman planning centerpieces and wedding playlists while he slid in and out of hotel rooms with women who probably thought they were the exception. Then came December 22nd. He got home around 5, earlier than usual. I was in the kitchen making coffee when he walked in, loosened his scarf, and said almost casually, "Oh, by the way, don't expect any gift from me this Christmas. I'm really tight on money right now." Something about the way he said it cracked whatever numbness I had left. Not the words themselves, the tone, dismissive, entitled, like generosity was some burden he was being unfairly asked to carry, even while I knew exactly where his money had been going. Hotels, champagne. Those restaurants, he said, were too expensive when I suggested them. The excitement of other women. The thrill of being wanted in multiple directions at once. So I kept my face still and said, "Fair enough, but you'll still get your gift." He barely looked up. "Okay." That night, he went out again. Last-minute holiday drinks with the team, he said. But I had already seen the messages. He was meeting Andrew. Hotel downtown. Champagne. Celebrating early. I watched his car pull out of the garage, and the second the taillights disappeared, I moved. It took me 45 minutes to pack everything I had left. Clothes, shoes, toiletries, books, my Xbox, kitchen things I brought into the relationship, the framed photo of my grandparents, the blanket my mother knit me in college. I was methodical about it, clinical. I didn't touch anything communal. I didn't take anything he bought. I wanted no room for argument later, no excuse for him to chase me over property or accuse me of spite. I wanted him standing in that apartment with absolutely nothing to hold on to except the truth. I saved the engagement ring for last. It was still in the velvet box from the jeweler, the one I used to hide in the back of my sock drawer like it was some private promise I was protecting until the timing felt perfect. I had spent 3 months' salary on that ring because I believed in doing it right. I believed in forever. I believed in him. I put the box in the center of the dining table under the overhead light. No note, no explanation, just the ring. That was the gift. Not reconciliation, not a scene, not one more chance to lie to my face while pretending remorse counted as love. The ring was the decision, the ending, the cleanest sentence I could leave behind without writing a word. Then I locked the door for the last time and left. The calls started around 11:30 that night. I know because I had just finished unloading the last box into my new studio when my phone began vibrating across the hardwood floor like it wanted to escape the room. 15 missed calls from Paige. 27 text messages. I didn't open any of them at first. I poured myself 3 fingers of whiskey, sat on the floor of my half-empty studio, and watched the screen keep lighting up in the dark. Around 1 in the morning, curiosity beat pride. The messages had evolved exactly the way I knew they would. Where are you? Why is all your stuff gone? Why is the ring on the table? This isn't funny. Answer your phone. Please just talk to me. Whatever this is, we can fix it. Then later, you're being childish. You owe me an explanation. I'm calling your parents. Your mom won't tell me where you are. What did you tell them? At 1:30, I blocked his number. At 9 the next morning, someone started buzzing my building. I didn't answer. They buzzed again and again. Eventually, another tenant let him in just to make it stop. Then came the heavy footsteps on the stairs, the pounding on my door. His voice on the other side, raw, ragged, almost unrecognizable. "Iris, I know you're in there. Open the door." I stood in the middle of my tiny studio listening to him pound on the wood while every memory I had of him fought with every screenshot in my inbox. For 1 second, the part of me that loved him almost opened the door. Almost. I didn't open the door. Paige stood outside my new apartment for nearly 10 minutes, pounding, crying, demanding that I explain myself like I was the one who had detonated our life and disappeared into the smoke. The irony would have been funny if it had not hurt so much. He kept saying, "You can't just leave like this. That's not how adults handle things." I stayed quiet. My downstairs neighbor finally shouted that he would call the police if the noise didn't stop. Paige left. 3 hours later, he came back with his brother Trevor. I opened the door a few inches, chains still on. Trevor looked uncomfortable the second he saw my face. Paige looked wrecked. Mascara streaked, eyes red, panic all over him. Trevor spoke first, calm and careful. Look, I don't know what happened. Not really, but he's been losing his mind for 2 days. Can you at least tell him what this is about? I looked at Trevor and said, ask your brother where he was on November 18th, November 23rd, December 4th, and December 10th. Ask him who Andrew Chun is. Then ask him if he really needs me to explain why I left. Paige went white. Trevor turned to him slowly. What is she talking about? Paige grabbed his arm. Nothing. She's making things up because she's... I have screenshots, I said. Months of conversations, hotels, multiple women. I have everything. The silence that followed lasted maybe 3 seconds, but it felt longer. Trevor looked at his brother, and I watched understanding hit him in real time. Confusion first, then disgust, then disappointment so sharp it made him look older. Jesus Christ, Paige, he said quietly. Paige tried to speak, but whatever lie he had been reaching for died halfway to his mouth. Trevor looked back at me. I'm sorry, I wouldn't have come if I knew. Then he grabbed Paige by the arm and said, we're leaving. I could hear Paige crying all the way down the stairs. That was the last time I ever saw him in person. After that, life got smaller before it got better. Christmas passed, then New Year's. I worked too much. Ate takeout over my sink. Slept on a mattress in a studio with bare walls and boxes I unpacked too slowly. But it was mine. Quiet, clean, untouched by him. That mattered more than comfort at the time. Paige kept trying to reach me through mutual friends. I blocked every number. On January 4th, our friend Lauren called and said Paige wanted to apologize. I told her to pass along a message. I didn't want an apology. I wanted to never hear from or about him again. Lauren didn't call after that. Then I found out he had been fired. Apparently, someone at his company reported him for using work time and company equipment to manage all his extracurricular relationships. By the end of January, he had broken the lease and moved back in with his parents. The landlord refunded me half my deposit because I had been honest and cooperative the whole time. Paige, apparently, had not been. The engagement ring stayed with me, not out of sentimentality, just uncertainty. I shoved it in my sock drawer and left it there, still in the box. A $3,000 reminder that love means nothing when the person you love is mostly fiction. On Valentine's Day, I got a letter. 6 handwritten pages. A confession, an explanation, an apology, a plea. He said he had felt neglected. Said he got addicted to the excitement of attention. Said Andrew and the others meant nothing. Said he was in therapy now. Said he still loved me. Said if I could forgive him, he would spend the rest of his life making it up to me. I read it once. Then I burned it in my kitchen sink. After that, things finally started to shift. I dated a little. Nothing serious. Just enough to remind myself that starting over at 31 was not the tragedy I thought it might be. A year later, I ran into Trevor at a hardware store. He looked tired, kinder somehow. He told me Paige was doing better now. New job, own place, therapy. He said Paige still asked about me sometimes. I nodded and said, that's good. And I meant it. Not because I wanted him back. I didn't. But because by then I no longer needed him to suffer in order to feel healed. Trevor said something else before we parted. He told me he had said to his brother, more than once, that he blew up the best thing that ever happened to him, and didn't deserve a second chance even if I had wanted to give one. I thanked him, bought the light bulbs I came for, and went home. I don't think about Paige much anymore. Some days not at all. The ring is still in my drawer. Maybe I'll sell it one day. Maybe I'll keep it. I haven't decided. What I have decided is that I'm not the same woman who sat at a dining table almost a year ago, reading messages that shattered her life. She was too trusting, too willing to explain away distance, too in love with an idea. I'm not her anymore. And honestly, I don't miss her.